Step into the super crowd, where dreams take flight. Learn to invest like a pro. Make your future bright. Impact investing, changing the game. Crowd from the world, it'll never be the same. SuperCrowdHour, come join the ride. Change the world with us, we're on your side. SuperCrowdHour, come join the ride. Change the world with us, we're on your side.
Welcome to the Super Crowd Hour. I'm Devin Thorpe, and I'm going to be talking today about how you can make more money more safely. I think that's something you probably want to do. So let's jump in here. I'm excited. We'll be talking about the difference between gambling and investing today. And, it's remarkable how that difference is more of a blurry line than a sharp one. And I want to encourage you to be as far from gambling as possible, because that's how you build long-term, secure, keepable wealth. So stick around with this. We're going to have such a great conversation today. We'll be talking about not only the difference between gambling and investing, but we'll also talk about how you diversify your portfolio to accomplish that. So it won't just be a cautionary tale, but an instructive one as well that will equip you to be successful. I want to thank Chandan Saha, who is our producer. He makes this show possible. He also serves as the managing editor of Superpowers for Good, our newsletter, and our event technology manager, supporting our events year round. He is an unbelievably important part of our team, and I want to acknowledge and thank him for his support. We're talking about money today, and as such, it's easy to sort of get focused on that. And I want to make sure that as we're talking about money today, that you appreciate that I'm not your financial advisor. I'm going to educate you and inform you today, but I'm not your financial advisor. So as you think about making your own investments, you may want to counsel with a CPA, a lawyer. You may want to talk to a financial advisor, other professionals. I don't replace those folks in your life, but I hope that what we share today is helpful and informative. We're going to be talking about investing. And one of the fun things that we do at the Super Crowd is to host a monthly meeting of the Impact Cherub Club. And we have so much fun with that. I want to encourage you to consider joining us. The Impact Cherub Club meets monthly on the third Tuesday of the month, typically. And we meet at 1:30 Eastern. You can learn more at the impactcherubclub.com. But if you are interested in making investments, it's so much more fun to do it with friends and to do it with the benefit of the wisdom of the crowd, right? So you're not relying entirely on your own judgment. So it's fun, practical, and really return enhancing, I assure you. I want to encourage you to join the newsletter. join the super crowd. We invite you to do that. You can join for free as a member of the Super Crowd at superpowersforgood.com. Just scan that QR code that you see on the screen now, and that'll give you an opportunity to become part of our community. Our newsletter is really a guide to making more money with impact, doing more good in the world. It's kind of a magical principle that there are opportunities to invest your money that can do just as much or more good in the long run as the money you donate to charity and deliver financial returns to you as well. So it's a wonderful thing. We invite you to check it out. If you have questions today as we're chatting, I want you to feel welcome to just visit this URL, scan this QR code, or type in 4sc.fund/question. And that will get you to our little question form. In fact, you may want to pull that up right now in case you think of a question while you're watching. And I recognize some of you may be watching a recording of this. Guess what? I didn't die. I'm still here. So if you submit the question, I'll be able not to answer it live on the show if you're watching the recording, but I will be able to respond to you by email with a quick answer. So I encourage you to open up that form. And if you think of a question as we're going through this content today, feel free to submit your question. I've written a lot of books over the years, and some of them have been extraordinarily popular. I'm pleased that millions of people have read some of my books, and I invite you to check out this one. This is Crowdfunding Made Simple, and it's really a guide to raising capital. So if you are interested in raising capital, and many of you are, you're entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs aspiring to be entrepreneurs, check it out. Raising capital is an essential, important part of being an entrepreneur oftentimes. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Everyone can invest via crowdfunding, and everyone has some investments. There's virtually no one that doesn't have some investments. And making sure that you think about investing for impact via crowdfunding as part of your investment portfolio, not necessarily all of it, but as part of it. I encourage you to check it out. This is an opportunity for you to learn more. And you can get this book for free. Again, it's also available as an ebook and audiobook and everything from Amazon if you want to go there. But you can get a PDF download at 4sc.fund/ebook free at that QR code. Following the live stream today, which anyone can access for free without paying a dime, we'll be having a private VIP Q&A session. If you are interested in really getting serious about investing and you want to join this VIP session, you are welcome to do that. There are a few slots left. We limit this to just 10 people so that each person has an opportunity to ask their specific targeted questions and get a real answer. So just visit 4sc.fund/VIPSEP, as in September. So that's VIPSEP at the end there, 4sc.fund/VIPSEP, and we'll get your questions answered in a more face-to-face kind of Zoom setting. So we look forward to seeing you there. Coming up in January, we're organizing an event we're really excited about in partnership with Green to Gold, a 501c3 nonprofit incubator that supports climate innovation and sustainability. This is going to be really a magical event. We'll be streaming 24 hours a day for 72 straight hours. This is going to be an amazing event. So check it out at supergreenlive.org. I I need to recognize our amazing sponsors. We can't do this work without their support. We're grateful for the support we get from our subscribers, our impact members of the Super Crowd who pay to join, and we're grateful for their support. But there's a lot going on, and so we need the funding of our sponsors. We're grateful to them. I want to praise and thank them now.
Digital Niche Agency is the top investor acquisition agency. DNA has helped founders raise over 9 figures via regulated investment crowdfunding with a 3-pronged strategy using digital advertising, content marketing, and strategic outreach. You can't argue with success, but you can learn from it. Put the best to work for you. Book a call today.
The property was dilapidated. It was horrible. It was code violations, drugs, crime, rundown RV trailers, no parking lot, no lights at night, just nothing. Our main focus is second chance housing. A lot of affordable housing households are led by single mothers. Our portfolio is 100% affordable. So our mandate is to be 20 to 30% below market rent. I'm personally $180,000 invested. We're only one of 2 companies globally to have a published social impact report for affordable housing on a Morningstar platform.
We're grateful for the support we've received from Move the Needle with Rob Kaplan and Ridgecrest Herbals, a certified B Corp. We appreciate our co-hosts.
Prepare to be inspired by Devin Thorpe, a powerhouse in impact journalism and social good advocacy. This best-selling author hosts the acclaimed Superpowers for Good TV show featuring global changemakers like Bill Gates. With a readership of over 2 million, his 500-plus Forbes articles have shaped the dialogue on purpose-driven leadership and crowdfunding innovation. A sought-after speaker from the United Nations to Johnson & Johnson, Devin's unique blend of expertise as a former CFO and investment banker fuels his captivating presentations. Please welcome the dynamic and visionary Devin Thorpe, here to empower us all to harness our superpowers for good.
Well, I'm excited. We finally get to get going here now. So now we're going to talk. The reality is that gambling and investing have some parallels, right? You give your money over and you hope to get more money back. And sometimes what we call investing looks a lot more like gambling than investing if we're not doing it right. And what is gambling? Gambling has a negative expected return, right? And so if you are investing using a gambling approach, you can expect poor returns. And you don't want that. So let's talk. Okay, let's get to work. Today we're going to be talking about diversification. That really is the key difference between gambling and investing. And so we'll talk about why it matters. We'll talk about 3 dimensions of diversification that are important. We'll talk about how to weight your investments or how not to. And we'll talk about investing in diverse founders. That's kind of a tangent to this topic about diversification. But while we're talking about diversification, it makes sense to talk a little bit about diversity. So we'll be covering that as well. I want to explain, just a few weeks ago, the Powerball lottery reached a pool of, I think it was well over $1 billion. It approached $2 billion. The odds of winning are, like 1 in several hundred million. So there was this rare moment, and it happens occasionally, where even for the $2 ticket price, the odds of winning were such that in theory, there was a positive expected value from buying a ticket in the Powerball lottery. Now, the reality is, even though you might have been able to say mathematically, a finance professor would say, hey, it's got an positive expected return. Your odds of winning are 1 in 300 million for every ticket you buy, right? And so if you bought 6 tickets, you've got 6 chances in 300 million out of your 12. You're not going to win, right? You can be almost 100% confident that you are not going to win. Let's just say this: if you were talking to an oncologist and he said you had a 1 in 300 million chance of getting cancer, you'd be pretty sure you didn't have cancer, right? So I want you to think about it. It's still gambling, even if you have this theoretical positive expected return, and with a lottery ticket. So when you are making an investment, if you make one isolated investment in a long shot startup, you are really gambling. That's not really an investment. It's much more like buying a lottery ticket than investing in a genuine, strategic, thoughtful way. And you're probably not going to get any money back. Professional investors, serious investors, dedicated investors, experienced investors all have one thing in common: they build portfolios. They are not using that approach of making one investment and counting on one investment to pay off for them, right? Okay, so let's talk about kind of how that works. There are 3 different dimensions of diversification that we'll talk about today. The first dimension I want to talk about is public versus private, right? So when you buy stocks in the stock market, we talk about the stock market as being a public marketplace. When you invest on WeFunder, Start Engine, Dealmaker, those portals are offering shares in a private marketplace. It's a subtle difference, but it's an important one. So that's one aspect of diversification. A second is industries, and we'll talk about that at some length because it's so critical to diversify your portfolio across industries. We may have a favorite cause du jour, and I suspect many of us do. We're trying to bring about a particular outcome, and our money can help bring that about. But we've got to be realistic and careful that we're diversifying our portfolio, or we could really be booby-trapping ourselves financially. And then the third aspect is to look at diversifying between real estate and securities in other businesses. Real estate and securities of other types, securities in the stock market, etc., tend to behave differently. And you want the benefit of behaving differently in your portfolio, right? So we'll go through all of this as we're talking today. We'll start with this idea of comparing the public with the private. There are a lot of financial advisors out there who will tell you that you should keep all of your money in traditional, mostly public investments. Or if you do any private investing, then it should be something that they offer you. Most financial advisors don't have experience with making direct investments. What you want to do is talk to your financial advisor, if you have one, about allocating a portion of your total portfolio, not all of it, but a portion of it, to direct investments in private companies. On average, these kinds of investments do a little better than public market securities. Generally, they can't be sold on a whim like a stock. So if you buy Tesla stock, whether it goes up or down tomorrow, you can be pretty sure you could sell your shares. They are marketable. So that won't be the case with your direct investments. So that's one of the reasons I don't encourage people to put all of their money in direct investments via crowdfunding. I love to see people putting a portion of their wealth there. I get nervous when people try to put all of their wealth there. If you are going to do that, reach out to me and let me introduce you to some financial advisors who are skilled and experienced at helping people build portfolios entirely of direct investments so that you understand how that works and get the benefit of professional eyes helping you to manage your wealth. But for most of us, the broad swath, I encourage you to allocate a portion of this. For instance, CalPERS, the big California pension fund, is very famously allocates a small percentage of its portfolio for its retirees to investments in venture capital, essentially a private direct investment vehicle. Okay, so you want to be able to do that too. And, whether you allocate 3%, 5%, 10% of your net worth to investments in direct investments, I think that's prudent. Some people might put up to a quarter or a third. Beyond that, we're starting to get into that territory where you're moving so much of your money, relying so much on this. I'd encourage you to make sure that you are talking to savvy financial advisors. And if you need help finding one that appreciates these strategies, let me know. I'm happy to introduce you. Now let's talk about industries. You really want to have a diversified portfolio across a number of industries. It's tempting if you have a cause in mind, a purpose. And a lot of us these days are thoughtful about climate change, right? And we're wanting to see innovation and adoption. And so as we allocate capital toward innovation that supports climate solutions, and as we allocate capital to reduce the cost of capital for adopting these technologies, we accelerate a transition to a more sustainable world, right? That is an important strategy. But if we have that mindset, just as a for instance, I'm not saying that all of you do or should. It's one of the things I like to think about, right? So I have a portion of my portfolio dedicated toward climate solutions. But it's important as you build that portfolio to be mindful of a variety of aspects, come at it from different directions. Imagine if you put all of your money in solar, right? You could do that, as solar is a vital part of climate solutions. But if you keep all of your money in solar, you are exposing yourself to a lot of risk. Even if you make multiple investments in different companies in the solar space, they all behave differently, or they'll all behave similarly in response to certain stimuli. So solar, income tax credits, right, in the United States or in Europe, big marketplaces might drive changes. Other subsidies that are being applied by governments that start or end can cause those stocks to all rise and fall at the same time, including private stocks, right? Private stocks may not have a ticker that you can check each day, but that value nonetheless is changing based on those kinds of things. So you want to be thoughtful that you diversify. And you want to go beyond just, say, wind and solar, right? You want to go big. Say, well, EVs represent a climate solution. Battery technology represents a climate solution. Better insulation in homes. Heat pumps represent climate solutions. Figuring out ways to transition buildings to eliminate the use of fossil fuels in heating and cooling buildings. That's a critical part of sustainability, right? But we don't often think about buildings. And so investing in LEED certified net zero kinds of buildings can be a part of a solution. But real estate ownership is going to behave differently than your solar stocks, right? So you begin to see how there is an opportunity to move beyond that. Now, that said, some things in the sustainability space will cause virtually everything to rise and fall. Again, it might be government mandates or incentives, right? Imagine, rules that the federal government might impose that require greater sustainability, greater energy efficiency or something. Imagine those rules going away, right? So those rules change the economic landscape universally for sustainability. So you want to have some stocks and industry investments outside of sustainability. So look for other areas of impact you might care about. Public health, affordable housing, all kinds of things that may not be related to climate, but that certainly have a social impact. You might want to look for opportunities to support veterans. Who knows what your agenda may be, but I encourage you to broaden it a little bit. Look for more opportunities so that you can build a more diverse portfolio across more industries. Now, as we talk about investing in real estate, I want to invite you to think about not just investing in one project, but in many projects. And crowdfunding investing is really an opportunity for you to do that pretty easily. What we see is that minimum investments in the crowdfunding space vary from $10 to $2,500. But many of us can afford investments throughout that range. But all of us, I think, can afford those $10 ones. And so look for opportunities to invest or lend money in the small dollar amount ranges for that kind of investment. And it really can give you an opportunity to build a diverse portfolio of real estate so that you're not just investing in one thing or another. Let me caution, however, if you already own a home and your home is a substantial part of your net worth, you may not need to focus on real estate as a strategic part of your portfolio because you already have plenty of real estate exposure. Not that you need to exclude it from your portfolio entirely, but you may not need to seek it out in the same way that a renter who's trying to build a strong, diverse portfolio would seek to add strategically to a real estate portfolio. Okay. I want to talk about waiting and a little bit about optimism. Optimism can really be lethal, right? We are dancing with the gambling devils when we start picking favorites, right? If you're building a diverse portfolio, and let's say your typical investment in your diverse portfolio is $500, doesn't matter. Maybe it's $10, maybe it's $5,000. Let's just use 500 as an example, but the same principle applies regardless of what your typical investment amount is in a deal. If you start to say, I really like this deal better than the others, I really think this one is going to pay off big. I want to be extra invested. Well, it's one thing to say I'll invest $600 instead of $500, 20% more. It gives you a little extra boost if that one does well. That's very reasonable. When you start talking about saying, well, I'm going to put $2,500 in that one or $5,000 in that one, now you're creating a bit of an elephant in your portfolio. And if that investment doesn't pay off as you hope, right, that optimism, you're creating in effect an elephant in your portfolio and hoping that your mice will outweigh the elephant. And I'm sorry, that just isn't how it's going to work. If that one big bet doesn't pay off, you are really going to feel it in your portfolio, your retirement, your kids' college. I mean, whatever you're investing toward could really be hampered by putting too much reliance on a single investment. Again, if you have favorites and you need to put an extra 20 or 30%, maybe 2x, that's okay. But when you start talking about 3x, 5x, 10x, you really are creating that elephant booby trap for yourself. And I encourage you to avoid that if you at all possible. I want to encourage you to set up some guardrails for yourself. I really don't think you ever want to put more than about 1% of your net worth in any single investment, not in any single mutual fund or not in any single stock, not in any single direct investment, certainly. So be thoughtful about this. I want to encourage you to kind of create and monitor this a guardrail. Set up some rules for yourself that will prevent you from doing that. Now, you hope that some of these small investments become very valuable in the future, whether you buy them in the public stock market or in the private marketplace. You hope they become worth more, right? Many of these investments, if you're making an equity type investment where you're focused on the appreciation and not a repayment of debt and interest, right? Those investments, you want to see them rise in value. Well, let's recognize that means that at some point they will be worth more than 1% of your net worth. And that's okay, right? I'm not saying that you immediately need to sell off the value and keep it to 1%. But if you start out, let's say you put 10% of your net worth into something, if it fails, that's a big chunk to lose. That could take you a year to regain what you lost in that one investment. And if it goes up in value tenfold, it could become half of your net worth. And every day now, half of your net worth is tied up in something you cannot control or influence. That could be a scary feeling that could reduce your ability to sleep at night, right? If you're worried about some startup in Toledo that you invested in that suddenly is doing really well, and now you're like, oh my gosh, my investment is worth so much money, but it's not very liquid. I can't sell it. I'm stuck with it. And what if it crashes and burns, right? And that could happen. So I really want to encourage you to start every investment small. Set up those guardrails so that you are not gambling. You're not creating elephants in your portfolio and optimistically believing that your mice can offset them, right? Set up the guardrails. I'm mixing all the metaphors, but I really want to drive home this point. You've got to have some boundaries, some rules. You've got to use caution and really genuinely diversify your portfolio as you build it out in order to create a sustainable portfolio. Okay, let's talk a little bit about investing in diverse founders. Um, Personally, my view is that there is an added benefit to having a portfolio that includes diverse founders intentionally. I do have great sympathy, and I believe you can be successful if you are investing, especially in a targeted niche of the underserved community, right? There's great data that suggests that women and minorities are not getting what I would call their fair share of venture capital or even of bank loans. Um, as a result, you may reasonably say, I'm only going to invest in women. I'm only going to invest in underrepresented founders by some definition you choose. And that's fine. If you do that, and I think that's fine. I want to encourage you to remember the diversification principles. Look to diversify across all those industries. Make sure that you're investing not only in real estate, but in some tech startups, and make sure that you're investing in some small businesses. Keep some investments in the public stock market where you can still invest in, you know, companies that are led by people who are in this group that you're targeting and want to support. That's a way of signaling your support even in the public arena. But whatever you're doing, try to accomplish that diversification and don't fall into a trap of finding yourself having invested in 32 um, you know vegan restaurants across the country. You as an individual shouldn't be using a fund approach. Like oftentimes funds will invest in a niche product, right? Just one kind of thing. And they can do that for a variety of reasons, including the simple principle that the people who invest in those rarely invest all of their money in those individual funds. They are building a portfolio that includes that fund. So a fund manager has the ability to invest in a narrow niche of products. You, as an individual, need a broad portfolio across industries. So don't accidentally fall into a trap of investing in a lot of similar businesses because they are all led by founders that fall into the group you want to support. So make sure you're still picking up all of the public private industry diversification, real estate versus securities. Get it all, even with your diverse founders. Okay. I want to shift gears though and talk to people who look like me, especially. If you're a white middle aged man, it really is tempting to use what venture capitalists call their pattern recognition to make investments that feel good and just feel right at some gut level of instinct. That approach to pattern recognition is really dangerous on this particular measure. When we talk about diversity, there are a lot more stories, people who look like me being successful for a variety of reasons, than there are stories of people who don't look like me. Now, like I say, there are a lot of reasons for that. But one of them is not skill, one of them is not talent, one of them is not potential. They are unrelated to these things. They tend to be more highly correlated with the probability that they ended up at a good school and somehow got introduced to the right network. So I want to encourage you to really be very cautious about pattern recognition, especially as it regards the founder teams, right? You want to look for skills and passion. And skills and passion are not closely associated with the college pedigree, right? Where the diplomas hang from or if they have them, right? It's not correlated at all with the complexion of their skin. It isn't correlated at all with gender and gender identity. And so I really want to encourage you to broaden your horizon, to look for people. And what you may find is that you're able to enhance and improve the returns in your portfolio by investing in a more diverse set of founders. Okay. I think with that we can move on. I've made my point. I hope. So now if you can build that really truly diverse portfolio, it really creates a very different dynamic for you. You are going to be able to create a much more stable environment. Now, does that mean your portfolio won't go up and down in value? No, it doesn't mean that. During a recession, especially, you will see the value of your investments go down. That will be almost universally true. The only investments that won't go down are investments that, almost by definition, don't provide very high returns. And so if you invest only in those, yes, you will be safe. And if that's the only way you can sleep at night, I encourage you to do that. But it's very hard to save sufficient amounts of money invested at, bank deposit rates for retirement, for for your kids' college education, and those kinds of things. You typically need higher returns, which means taking on some risk and but by building the diverse portfolio, you reduce the risk a little bit to the tolerable level. But let's not kid ourselves. In a recession, you will see the value of your portfolio go down. Stocks will go down in value. Bonds will go down in value. You will see some of the investments you make in real estate will go down in value. Some of the investments you make in startups will go down in value. Not all of them. Some of the debt investments you make will get paid back 100% as planned, right? Some of the companies, some of the startups will succeed despite a recession and do very well. But a recession will dampen your returns, and you may see that for 12 to 36 months easily in a bad recession. It was probably about 5 years in the last Great Recession. The Great Recession was really our last official recession. We had some economic turbulence for sure during COVID and other times since then, but we've never really had an official recession since 2008. Can you imagine? It's been a long time. We're due. I hate to say that. We're due. So it took about 5 years in the Great Recession from the peak of the stock market before the recession until the stock market got back to that peak level. Now it's multiples of where it was, right? So if you stayed in the stock market, you did just fine. But those who didn't may have been wiped out. Anyway, diversification reduces the risk of your portfolio to something that more resembles the market, but it will not eliminate the risk of all losses, right? In a recession, you can still expect to see losses in your portfolio, and that is virtually unavoidable except by accepting very low returns over the long haul. So let me suggest some practical next steps. First, I want to encourage you to audit your portfolio. Look for oversized investments. And it's easy to get tricked into that. I invested years ago in a company that went up and up and up, and And I got so excited that every time it started to dip, I started to invest a little bit more because I liked it going up and up and up. Guess what? It stopped going up. It really stopped going up. Money's been parked there for years. So you want to keep your investments. Don't fall in love with the companies you buy. You've got to be prepared to sell them. But audit that portfolio. Look for the oversized investments and how they got to be oversized, and figure out strategies to diversify the risk away, and if necessarily, sell off parts of those investments. And as you then look at your portfolio, think strategically about your next investments. Many of you will be looking at a portfolio of investments that is primarily based in mutual funds, ETFs, your 401ks. That's where most of us have our value, is during our working years in a 401k. We might transfer that to an IRA afterward, lower fees typically. But as you are looking at those things, look for the opportunities. Chances are good you don't have much exposure to those direct private investments. And so that's a really strategic way for you to begin adding to your portfolio. And there are ways that you can do that with very small amounts of money initially, right? SMBX offers $10 minimum investments. Climatize offers $10 minimum investments. So you can begin dabbling. You can also invest in the real estate fund called Worthy Bonds, right? That's a Reg A offering, essentially crowdfunding, $10, no fees, and you can get your money back out anytime you want. I won't say it's risk-free, but so there are lots of options. I can think of those 3 specific examples for you to consistently invest, starting with just $10. So you can begin taking some of those steps, planning those steps to diversify your portfolio. But you may say, I want to get more tech in my portfolio, and I may want to get more, whatever it is that you feel like is missing. You may find that what your portfolio really lacks is that impact alignment. So you can begin thinking about, how do I align my investments with my financial goals and my passion for climate solutions, or my passion for improving public health, or my passion for social justice and eradicating poverty and improving the lives of those who are less fortunate. So, there are opportunities for you to invest. I think of one of our sponsors, Proactive Real Estate, is they're doing a crowdfunding campaign right now, and you can invest in housing that is really some of the housing for some of the lowest income people. He talks about the second chance housing. Well, that second chance housing, what are we talking about? These are people sometimes who've been foreclosed on in the past. Maybe they've been evicted. Maybe they've spent some time in prison. And we're giving them an opportunity to have a stable life. You can invest in that. So there's an opportunity to invest in these kinds of ideas of social justice, along with getting that kind of diversification. I mean, there's just so many exciting opportunities. I want you to begin exploring and being strategic about how you can diversify your portfolio and align it better with your own social mission. I want to encourage you to be as deliberate about this as you would be if you were farming. It's sort of tempting, if you will, to think about this as haphazard, as something that happens all by itself. that you just keep investing and you can ignore diversification. And the reality is that's really not true. A farmer would always, as he thinks about planting, his their crops, they'll be very strategic about the rotation, the diversification, especially those that are trying to build a sustainable, organic kind of farming approach, a regenerative approach, right? They're very strategic about the crops that go over here and what we raise here this year and what we plant over here. Very strategic. I want you to be similarly strategic, similarly deliberate. Don't just be passive and look back periodically. Let's be forward thinking. Let's be strategic about the diversification so that we can have all of the benefits that come from this. Now, I've got an opportunity to take some questions. If you have questions for us today, I'm happy to answer them. We did get one question that came in, Amanda Greer. Let's see, how can someone with only a small amount of money to invest apply diversification effectively? I think that's a great question, Amanda, and I thank you for asking that. Small amounts of money are the way all of us should start building out our direct investment portfolio. And I think that's an important part of diversifying our total portfolios. As I mentioned, most people start with the 401ks and the IRAs, right? That's where the money is that's accumulating in our lives. Our home equity is another spot if we own a home. And so as you begin to make direct investments, I want to encourage you to be strategic and deliberate there, and starting with small investments, however you may define that, is really important for all of us. Because if you put too much in early on, you get a double risk. Not only are you creating an elephant in your private investment portfolio that may need to be overcome with a lot of mouse investments, but you may also be doing that naively in your early days of investing. What I see is that the more time I spend doing investment analysis and being thoughtful and strategic about investments, the better I get at it. And you will have the same experience. The more you are deeply analyzing these investments before you put money in, that will enhance your return, right? But no matter how much time you spend on your first investment, there are just things you can't learn fast enough. So you want those first investments to be small. So lots of websites in this crowdfunding space will let you invest $100 or less to start. And so many of us can afford that $100. If you're in the group that is looking for that $10 starting place, SMBX is one, Climatize is another, and Worthy Bonds is another place where you can start dabbling in and investing strategically in solutions with small amounts of money. But most crowdfunding websites have some $100 investments. So those of us who can't afford to do $100 in an investment have a lot of options. And there are others who have more ability to do and can do $1,000. And most, about 99% of crowdfund offerings have a minimum investment of $1,000 or less. Looks like we got another question. Is there such a thing as being too diversified? I think the short answer to that is no. You can't probably be too diversified. Now, can you have too many investments? There's an argument that having hundreds and hundreds of investments makes it hard to track. So I don't think it's an unreasonable question to ask. So you want to be deliberate, strategic, and deal with your own issues, because you kind of have to keep track of these companies. Some of the portals that you use to invest could go away, and so you're going to have to be maintaining deliberately some point of contact with the companies you invest in case those the portals aren't tracking them adequately for whatever reason. So you've got to be strategic about that, be thoughtful, but from a purely diversification standpoint, I don't think you can be too diversified. Everything you do that gives you exposure to something new that is not correlated highly with the rest of your portfolio really enhances the value of the portfolio. So can't really be too diversified. You can bury yourself administratively. That's really a different concern and question. And so as our technology around this stuff improves and matures, I think we'll be able to build portfolios that are genuinely enormous in terms of the number of investments, because we've made a lot of small dollar investments. That's what I kind of expect. All righty. Well, we are getting to where we need to wrap up and head into our VIP session. I'm kind of excited to have the opportunity to visit with some of you who may want to go a little deeper, talk a little bit more about your personal situations. I'm happy to do that. And, in that session, we can learn from each other as well. There'll be a little give and take. So if you want to join that session, it's not too late. You can still register at 4sc.fund/VIPSEP, and you'll get an automatic email with the details how to join this VIP session that will begin momentarily. So as soon as we wrap up here, we'll open up that VIP Zoom and we'll watch for you there. And so feel free to jump on now. But if you're watching the recording, don't do this. We'll turn off the registration soon, so you can't do it. But the VIP session will be live on September 17th at 1 Eastern and 9 Pacific, and corresponding times around the world. So we hope to see you all in the VIP session. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next month for the Super Crowd Hour.